Well, hi, everyone. Welcome to Gig. I'm your host, Mike Redman. This is The Working Drummer, a 4-part series packed with insights on thriving as a freelance drummer, groove development, networking, session work, and the mindset that makes it all possible. In this episode, my guest is Nashville session drummer, John Hammond. He's played on hundreds of recordings and is comfortable talking with you about what it takes to be successful as a career drummer. And oh, by the way, ignore the weird reflection in my glasses. I couldn't figure out what it was. I really hope you enjoy this series. And if you do, please take a moment to like the show and share it with others. Let's jump right in. I want to start off by asking you to talk a little bit about how you broke into the studio session or scene.
Okay. Yeah, I'm one of those, I wouldn't call it a unicorn, but it's a pretty rare situation where my older brother, Mark Hammond,
Uh-huh.
came to town first. He's also a drummer,
Mm.
an incredibly good drummer. Matter of fact, when I go to his house to have dinner and his son Chipper's there, I'm the third best drummer at the table. So my brother came first in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing down in Valdosta, Georgia. I was in school at Valdosta State College. And interestingly, I was in the jazz band and did stuff like that and did gigs around town, but I was a pre-law major. I wasn't even going to pursue music at the time.
Mm.
The other thing about my brother was that he was, from an early age, he was a prodigy. He was one of those kids that he's 2.5 years older. He was 4 and 5 and beating on pots and pans and stuff. And my mother's she's passed, but her master's in music education. So she was teaching music and obviously was very musical and recognized quickly that Mark was incredibly gifted. So that happened, and he was pursuing that. And so growing up, it's an interesting thing. Like my other little private joke is that I wasn't even, as a kid, I wasn't even the best drummer in the bathtub, So it's like, I had no perspective. I had no, to me, he's just my older brother. I didn't know that,
Yeah.
I knew everybody's older brother could play drums like that. And then by the time we got to high school, and actually even my mom did not want me to play drums, even though I played on his drums all the time. I started on trombone, and that lasted about 2 years. I went through beginner band and intermediate band, and then it's like, yeah, this is not. And the other thing was I wore braces at the time, and coincidentally wearing braces again now. I have Invisalign. I took them out so I could talk well, but yeah. So but I kind of got to that point where I'm like, I'm not going to pursue trombone, and so and then so my brother was in high school at that point. This was like I think I was probably I was going into high school. Got out of the intermediate band in 8th grade, so graduated to 9th grade. And then my brother was in the marching band and writing music for the drum section in the marching band. And he would get with me and say, "Hey, John, I'm going to play this part. You play that part, and we'll work this little thing out for the drum section." I said, "Sure." And so we would play it. And it was to me it was nothing. I was like, whatever. And then he gets to the high school, and not to run anybody down, but they couldn't play it. So the other kids, and so he would go to my mom and say, "Look, Mom, please let John play drums because we got to do this." And so she agreed. Mark had been studying with a man named Jack Bell, who was the then principal percussionist for the Atlanta Symphony. We grew up in North Georgia, and so then I started taking with Mr. Bell, and I studied with him for 2 years. Mark studied with him for 5 years. Still, even though we went through high school. Mark was in 1976, the state of Georgia instituted the All-State Jazz Band. They had all-state orchestras and things like that before.
Yeah.
They did not have the jazz band, so they instituted that in 1976. And my brother was the first one. He was the all-state drummer, jazz drummer in 1976. Another dear friend, Scott Meter, brilliant drummer in Atlanta. He was 77. Then I made it in 78. So, but still, even graduating high school, I was not going to pursue music. Got to college. Was a pre-law major, and I think around that time, Mark was probably already moved to Nashville, and he was playing at Opryland, which was at the time. I don't know if you're familiar with Opryland.
Oh yeah,
big music-based theme park, tons of musicians hired there. Anyway, so I was in college for a couple of years. Literally took every class I could take that was not applicable to a specific major. And then finally, my advisor in college said, "You've got to declare a major. You can't. You really, it cannot take anything else here. You've exhausted your the courses you can take without,
Hmm.
being courses specific to a major. And I said, okay, well, I'm gonna, I talked to my mom. She said, well, just take a break. Just walk away from, we'll see what happens. And so I was playing gigs. There was a little band down in Valdosta we had called the Reunion Blues Band. We got permission to use that name from the Case Company, and it was kind of a Blues Brothers knockoff.
Hmm.
And did a few gigs. And my roommate at the time was a still a good friend named Tom Bose. And Tom introduced me to this Christian band, this God's contemporary Christian band called the Imperials. Even though I grew up in church, I had never heard of the Imperials.
Mm.
Um, and so, but I heard this record, and it's so funny that the things that happened all the years later. It was produced by a guy named Michael Lamartian, who's a brilliant keyboard player. He's now a dear friend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And like I said, I had never even heard of his music. As far as I knew, church music was Southern gospel, boom chicka boom, and or hymns. That's all I thought of. And so I'm hearing contemporary Christian music, and it's like this incredibly well produced, great players. Um, just everything about it was fantastic. So I fell in love with that stuff. And it was the Imperials' One More Song for You record, and then the record Priority came out after. I mean, it may have been the Priority break. It was those two records. And man, talk about how God moves in your life. It's like within 2 or 3 months, I
Hmm.
was in Nashville in Russ Taff's band, and Russ was part of the Imperials at the time, and he had just broken away to pursue a solo career. What happened there was I went. My stepbrother got married in North Georgia, so I came up from Valdosta. My brother Mark came down from Nashville. We went. We,
Hmm.
we were in the wedding, obviously, with my stepbrother. And afterwards, Mark said, "Hey, you got a couple of days free. Why don't you just come hang with me in Nashville for a few days?" Oh, sure, whatever. So I drove up and spent a couple of days with him in Nashville. Left Nashville. It's about a 3.5 hour drive home. Got home. This is way before cell phones. Got home, and my mom says, "Well, get back in your car. You're going back to Nashville. You've got an audition in the morning."
Whoa.
Yeah, this is how quickly these things happen. And yeah, and I'm just like, what? I don't.
Hmm.
Okay, whatever. So went to the audition, got the gig, and it was with Russ Taff, who I said was the singer from the Imperials who had
Yeah.
just gone solo. So that's how I got to Nashville. That's how I got into the gig, and the reason into music professionally, and
Hmm.
the reason I referred to the kind of a unicorn thing is like I don't know anybody else whose older brother paved the way for them, and it's like everybody
Yeah.
else works hard and does.
Yeah.
I've I mean I saw the topics that you sent out. Thank you for that. And I looked at it and I'm like, well, yeah, I've got kind of a different story than a
Yeah.
lot. 'Cause, yeah,
You sure do.
I wasn't one of those people who I mean I definitely played some crappy gigs. Don't get me wrong, but I wasn't one of those guys who had to work just work your tail off, go
Hmm.
to, and play in these horrible gigs for the worst gig I ever had was a 6 nighter in Atlanta, 9:30 to 3:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah,
And
I've done lots of those myself.
yeah,
Hmm.
it was I think I made $180 for the week.
Well, you
Uh,
beat me. I made 150.
well, okay, well, then I should count my blessing, right? Um, anyway, so yeah, but so I've done those, but it's like I didn't. Man, I just I was incredibly blessed. I had and even when I got to Nashville, I was doing the Russ Taff gig, which I think I was with Russ for about 4.5 years or so.
Hmm.
Um, I would when we were home because Russ wasn't traveling constantly. It wasn't like these 300 dates a year or anything like that. It's probably doing I don't know, guessing 150 dates a year, something like that. So
Yeah.
we would have plenty of time at home, and Mark would recommend me for sessions, and I would do
Mm.
some sessions, um, and then I'd go back on the road. Then finally, this another keyboard player friend of mine, Dave Hunsinger, a brilliant player. He
Sure is. Yep.
yeah, Dave.
I
Yeah,
don't know him. I know his work really
yeah,
well.
you know the name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a brilliant player. And he just one time he called me for a couple of days in the studio, and I said, Dave, I can't do it. I'm on the road. And he just said, John, you got to get off the road. You're missing too much money. You're
Mm.
basically you're ready to advance.
Hmm. Yep.
And so not long after that, I decided it was probably a good thing, and that's when I started doing sessions. And like everybody, it's slow when you start, and um, uh, but yeah, that's in a really big nutshell. That's how I that's
Yeah.
how I got to Nashville and got
That is
into.
an unusual story. But you probably left out the part that you said you started kind of slow, but um, that's how it works. You know, you do sessions, people like you, and they say, "Hey, you should try John and Hammond," and the next guy says that, and the next guy says that, and before you know it, you're a busy drummer.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
exactly right. And and that's that's how you hope it works. And
yeah,
in all honesty, it's the converse works as well. It's like there's
yeah.
a lot of people who show up here and they don't have what it takes.
Well,
And
yeah, it's
bears
they used
itself,
to people. Sorry.
yeah, it bears itself out. I mean, if you're it's we'll probably get into it, but that's kind of part of why now when I talk to younger drummers, I'm just like, be prepared, but know these
Hmm.
styles, know all of this stuff. Just because you never know
Yep.
what's going to come along, who's going to hear it, and and you want to be prepared. And it's like nothing's worse than getting on a gig and just pardon me sucking, and then and then
Yeah.
you like, and then everybody hears that. Well,
Yep.
you that might not be representative of what you are as a musician, but that's what people see. So
And in places like Nashville and L.A. and Austin and some other places, it is that old saying of you got to wait for somebody to die to get a chance.
yeah,
I mean, when you get that chance, you better be ready for that chance.
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah, yeah. So, John, you play. I mean, I've listened to a lot of music, mostly with the smoking section and stuff. But
yeah.
you play with you so deep in the pocket,
Thank you very.
and it's yeah, and it's meant to be a big compliment because I know a lot of great drummers that never have quite found that. But
It,
did you? I mean, did you consciously work on that when you were a drum, starting, or is it just something you developed? I mean, along the way.
I I want to be very cautious with my answer here, but because to a degree, I kind of think you're born with it or you aren't.
Mm,
And when you get in terms of just that pocket thing,
yeah.
and say that now, let me qualify it and say um, it's interesting because well, I got to be careful with that story too. Uh,
You
well,
can tell any story you want, just leave the
well,
names
I just
out.
man, I just gosh, I never want to say anything that will make anybody look bad. I'll just say I
Yeah.
went to a gathering of drummers where there was a
Hmm.
bunch of people playing, a
Hmm.
bunch of different drummers playing, and it was a Jeff Porcaro tribute. I'll say that.
Okay. Yep.
So a bunch of people were invited. I was not invited, but I went to hear it.
Hmm.
And of the gosh, I don't know, it was probably at least 20 drummers or maybe
Hmm.
25. I'm not sure. And they were all great drummers. They are professional drummers. They were
Yep.
good players. And there were I think three, maybe four that they played one measure,
Hmm.
and you go, this guy's different. This
Oh.
this guy's this guy's got something that the other guys don't have, and
Uh,
that's and I also remember there's a couple of interestingly guitar players that I've worked with.
hmm.
One of them was this is a long time ago. Um, I was one of the early guys in Nashville to have a drum machine and programming, and
Oh yeah.
most of my session work to start off with was in jingles, and a lot of it was programming the drums rather than
Hmm.
playing. Um, so it's kind of known for that to a degree. And do you remember a song back in the '70s called "Shannon" by an artist named
Yeah, I
Henry?
do. Sure.
Yeah. Well, Henry Gross was here in town. He lives here in town. I haven't seen him since then, but he was doing. They were trying to get a deal. It was Henry Gross. It was a guy named Henry Paul, who was a great songwriter, great singer, and he was in the group Black Hawk.
Hmm.
Um, there's a guy that's named Jonathan Edwards, who the song "Sunshine," "Sunshine
Hmm.
Go Away Today," big hit, and they were going to do a group effort called the John Henrys, and so they were writing songs and working on this. And they called me to program some demos for them, all that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I say all of that to say is that they were working on this one song, and Henry Gross just picks up an acoustic guitar and starts playing it, and I remember thinking, "Wow, that dude has got so much." Even though it wasn't an R&B song,
Yeah.
that got so much soul in what
Mm.
he's doing, and the way he sings and the way he plays. You're
Hmm.
just like, man, dang,
Yeah.
that it's like And I've worked with tons of studio guys that are great players, great time, just play perfectly clean and all this other kind of stuff. But they might not necessarily have that same soul,
Sure.
but they're still very successful. They're great players.
Yeah. Hmm.
There was another guy what's his name? Gene Navarro. He's a producer. Um, Same thing as this. He was a Latin guy, Hispanic guy, and playing the demo for us. And even the guitar players on the session are like, Gene, you got to play that. It's it's like that's exactly what he's like. No, 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 you play,
Uh-huh.
but he was just one of those guys.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, that's like I don't know. I never. It's not like I've discovered some formula for just sitting down and playing one and three and
Hmm.
four, and making it feel good. But but to me, that's the thing. I'm not Mr. Chops. I can't even name um, like Larnell Lewis, whoever. There's so many guys out there that are just unbelievable drummers, and
Yeah.
I'm sure they've got incredible feel, but they're known for chops, and I'm
Yeah.
not a chops guy. I'm not.
Right.
I mean, I grew up listening to I idolized Jeff Porcaro, Carlos Vega, Steve Jordan. Um, I love Steve Gadd, although I don't play like that. That's not kind of
Yeah.
my thing. I'm much more. I would say probably much more like a Vega, and I'm not putting myself on that level. I'm not complimenting myself like that. But stylistically,
Hmm.
and my approach is much more like a Vega and a Porcaro and a
I'd say that's good company, you know.
yeah. Well, like I said,
So
that's what I aspire to.
I think
Play like.
that's a pretty good place to aspire to, and I think you're probably there. You just, you
Well,
do it every day, so you don't think about it.
I
So a couple about real basic question that I've been asked by lots of drummers: how important is it for a drummer to read music?
Well, that's interesting. In a town like Nashville, um, Nashville's kind of I don't know if it's a 50-50 split, but it's definitely a split community. Because there's players in Nashville, and this just sounds like I'm disparaging, and I'm absolutely not.
No.
These guys that come out of the hills and don't know
Yep.
anything about music, but they're unbelievable players, unbelievable musicians. They don't know what they're playing; they just play it, and they got
Yeah.
incredible ears and all of that stuff. And then you've also got, the more educated side, the
Hmm.
symphony players, the guys who did go to school and are
Yeah.
educated and learn to read. I think it's invaluable. Um,
Yeah.
Myself, because I basically built a career on it.
Hmm.
I started getting a lot of work playing with the Nashville String Machine, which is the recording orchestra.
Yeah.
Um, and it was like we did a lot of anything that involved reading, like and involved strings and brass and woodwinds and perk and all that kind of stuff. Um, a lot of church choral music. There's a lot of that work that's done. Um, and you have to be able to read because you sit down and they put a 6-page chart in front of you.
Yep.
Sometimes it's drum notation, sometimes it's just a rhythm chart with the significant things written in. But and you have to be able to read,
Yeah.
and so um, and even if you can't do that, to be able to understand a chart and read what we have in Nashville, the number system, to read a number chart, um, and be able to notate. Um, the things that you need to play. You listen like a typical
Right.
session. They'll hand out a chart, and 9 times out of 10, it's a number chart. You get the chart, you listen to a demo, you make some notes, and they played this rhythm there. You have to be able to make notations, and everybody
Good
kind of
point.
has their own. Yeah, everybody has their own shorthand. I certainly do, and even though I'm educated, I studied. My shorthand might not make any sense to you. It's like I
Right.
just know what So
Yeah.
uh, we've all got our little ways of writing things. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so yeah, it's invaluable to know how to read and to as much not just to read to make your own notes. If you're going to try to recreate something that somebody else has done,
Yeah.
you got to be able to write it down. Unless you've got an eidetic memory and you can, or you can, one of those people who hears it once and you can play it.
Yeah. 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 There's a guy I was talking to yesterday, Patrick Armitage. He's in.
Yeah, I know the name. I don't think we've met.
Yeah, he's in Asheville. He plays with an incredible tribute band called Dirty Logic, and
Oh,
they do nothing but Steely Dan,
oh
and
wow,
they do it. Oh, I'll try to remember to send you a link.
I'd like
It's
to
a
hear.
11-piece band, and I saw them, and I told the guy I was with, I said, Steely Dan never sounded this good.
Wow.
But they're kind of like, they're not as much studio musicians, but the best musicians, and and he was talking about reading music and stuff, and the idea that he says being really prepared, getting he says I do a lot of gigs where they give me a list of 20 songs the day before, and I
Yeah.
got to learn them, and he says if I can't do what you're saying, I'm really in bad shape. So
Yeah.
yeah. So you played in I mean, hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of sessions. I mean, with big names, Vince Gill, Miley Cyrus, Amy Grant, Jewel, and a lot of each of them has their own sound, right? And is there anything that you do if you're doing that session next week with, Miley Cyrus to prepare to, for her sound, or you know what I'm saying? Because each one's quite different, and you do all of them.
Yeah, actually, who's the one you mentioned? Jewel. I never recorded with Jewel. I played live with
Oh,
Jewel.
okay.
Just subbed for her drummer, but I still put it on my resume though.
That works. I mean, you did
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
I did it absolutely. Yeah, um, yeah. I mean, oh yeah, it absolutely behooves you to be familiar with what an artist does. Now,
Mhm.
unless they call you and say, "Hey, we're matter of fact, I got a call for a session yesterday, and the producer is also going to be the artist." He said, "Hey, I'm going to do this. It's actually a hymn direction, but I'm going to do them all bossa novas." So it's like that
Uh-huh.
right there tells me,
Yep.
of what to be prepared for.
Hmm.
Now, so unless the artist says, let's say it is somebody like an Amy Grant, who that's actually interesting. That's who I'm playing live with her these days. That's one of the gigs I'm
Oh,
doing.
okay.
I
Nice.
love her. She's so wonderful. Um, but yeah, unless you kind of need to know what they're looking for, and you
Hmm.
be familiar with what they do.
Sure.
Obviously, just so you can kind of know, get yourself in the ballpark. Now, again, if they're saying, yeah, we're going to try this, we're going to try this, then that will obviously
Mhm.
tells you what to be prepared for. But
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, absolutely, I would, and kind of my normal rig, my normal stuff that I show up with, is whether it's carded or not. It's like I'm going to be prepared to do just about anything. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, within reason. I mean, I don't when I unless it's a cartage thing, and boy, anymore nobody or people don't want to pay cartage.
Oh,
I
really? I
oh
didn't know that.
oh yeah, back in the day, I used to travel with a case that had 24 snare drums in it.
I know. I've seen them
Yeah,
before. Yeah, it was kind of that first time I ever saw it. I was like, "What the heck is that?"
yeah,
Yeah.
and again, being prepared, and that's way overkill. I would
Yeah.
tell any drummer, you don't have to do that. I mean, but you do want to be able to cover all the bases.
Sure. Hmm.
And so one of the reasons why I did that is just like I remember this one record I did where it's like every song on the record
Hmm.
was a ballad. It was a slow ballad,
Yeah.
with the deep kind of gushy kind of snare, and I'm like, um, okay, I said I don't want to do every song with the same drum, and so
Mm.
I had probably four different drums then that I could get that really low, nice, thick
Hmm.
snare drum sound, uh, but they didn't sound alike. I mean, they were
Right.
obviously similar; they were in the same register, but uh, yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I could justify to my wife that I needed another snare drum, which is yeah, not that easy. I think at most at my peak, I think I owned it was like 71 or two snare drums.
Oh, geez. You're like
Yeah,
my
yeah.
buddy that collects guitars and doesn't really play them anymore.
Oh yeah. I've
Yeah.
since pared that down quite a bit. I think I'm at a modest 30 something now. So
Oh, geez. So there aren't that many big studios left in the country, really
right,
big ones. I used to do a lot
right,
of work at Criteria down in Miami, um, which limits obviously the number of session dates.
right.
What do you do anything in particular to keep your calendar full, or if you've just been kind of around long enough that they're just saying, "Hey, call John"?
Well, I mean, it's that to a degree, and I'm very thankful. But I turned 64 last year, and
Oh,
like I said, I've been playing with Amy Grant,
hmm.
and I tell you what, that's one of those things. We just added a guitar player who was actually a couple of years older than me, Jerry McPherson, who had played with
Hmm.
her for years, and he was just. It's kind of funny. It's a bit comforting to me because I don't know if you've ever heard there's a the musician's joke, a musician's career. I'll use myself as an example, but
Hmm.
who is John Hammond? Get me John Hammond. Get me a young John Hammond. Who is John Hammond? That's the arc. That's the arc of your career as a
Oh,
musician.
gee.
And that is a danger of having that kind of thing. You have to be, mature enough to go. Yeah, it's great to be able to do this, but I'm not going to do it. You know.
Uh-huh. Somebody just told me, I interviewed him 2 hours ago, really incredible drummer, Randy Nichols. And he told me he played with Roy Clark once, and he's playing in the new Grand Ole Opry thing down in Orlando. Anyway, he said he was so nice, and he came up to me and he says, "Randy, I just love the way you play." And he said in the nicest way, he said, "Just remember, I'm the star." And he didn't say it in an arrogant way, like, shut him down. He was just
Yeah,
saying, keep it down, because
right.
you're here, you have a role here, right?
Absolutely. I
Um,
mean, another good way to look at that, and I've told other people, I've heard other people say it, play the song.
yeah,
What's the song call for?
yeah,
If it's a drum feature, then that's fine. But if
yeah.
it's a Roy Clark song and you're backing him while he does his thing,
Hmm.
of course, I guess he's been dead a long time, hasn't he?
He'd been dead a long time. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
okay, I
was
was just
this,
trying
this was
to,
an older story.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
But it's like, but still, it's a Roy Clark song. It's like, you know what it's going to be. It's a guitar
yeah,
feature. It's going to be him.
yep.
And yeah, and get back there and lay down the
Just
right
lay
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to switch subjects for a second. I wasn't really going to talk about this, but meeting you now, I feel like it's okay to talk about it. I was a very close friend of Tim Akers.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you a real quick story. He used to play before he came to Nashville. He played a place called the Contemporary Resort,
I heard him play up there. I've been up there.
okay. Well, there's another drummer that you may have run into at some point, Ronnie Kangro. And Ronnie was a good friend, and he was in my band back in the day. But I was a composer, and I needed somebody that was a really great keyboard player. He told me, he says, "You got to hire Tim Akers. He is so locked in, time
Yeah.
wise and everything. There's nobody like him."
Yeah.
So he came by and he knocked out the session. It was really easy for him. Well, we became very close friends, and he became my co-writer. We used to write together.
Wow.
So yeah, so it was very funny. One day he comes in the studio and he goes, "Mike," because he was really, more of a rhythm player at that time,
Right.
and he says, Don Scaletta, I don't know if you've heard of him, pretty famous keyboard player. He says, "I had a lesson with Don today, and he taught me how to play jazz." And I was like, "You mean you just learned how to play jazz in like an hour?" And he goes, "Yep, I did." And he was so serious about it. And I said, "So, okay, well, what is it?" And he goes, "Well, just imagine you're playing in the key of A." And he says, "Just take it up to B. Not to B, not a full step. Take it from G to A. Now play everything in A, and you're playing jazz." So it wasn't too long after that he said, "I'm going to Nashville." And we had a long talk about it because he really didn't know anybody there. And I said, Nashville is one of those places where it's very, very hard to break into the music scene there.
Yeah.
And he went up, and I think it was a month later he was working with Amy Grant and Michael O'Martin.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was an amazing career. And then I remember when he told me he was thinking about putting together this band, the Smoking Section,
Yeah.
which you still play with live, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, we do. And
Yeah.
let me back up just a little bit. It's funny, like when you said Tim's coming to Nashville,
Uh-huh.
it's like, yeah, he came and stayed with me.
Oh, did he? No kidding.
Yeah. No.
Oh, no kidding.
And I mean, not to say whatever, but it's like, I was probably one of there were several of us, Gary Lund, bass player, in the smoking section. I mean, we were all friends with Tim from
Yeah.
before he went to Orlando, because he's from here.
Oh,
He went to
yeah, originally, right.
Hendersonville High School. And I knew him before he left, when his dad moved down to Orlando when he's a home builder.
Right. Yep.
Built amazing homes. Before Tim went to Orlando, I knew him up here, and we did a handful of gigs and did some stuff together. And then he left, and then he, we stayed in touch, and I think I probably saw him in Orlando. Like I said, we went to the Contemporary and saw him play that band, and then when he was coming back, he had, he came because I was a bachelor at the time, and he came and stayed with me. And
Okay.
I'm trying to remember I get really fuzzy on the dates, but I was doing some stuff with Amy,
Uh-huh.
and some stuff with her then husband Gary Chapman. And that's another band that Tim. It was me and Tim
Mhm.
and a guitar player and a bass player that we played with Gary Chapman for
Okay. Yeah.
quite a few years there. And then and then we all kind of I just started working with O'Marty and so that's how all of that. But to your point before
It's
about how
interesting.
people recommend people, it's
Yeah.
like that's how it happens. It's like
Isn't that interesting?
thankfully Tim was prepared. I'll tell you one story
Mhm.
that to speak to. Let me think of the best way to say this. I mean, Tim was a dear friend. I have the utmost respect for his playing. When he first came to Nashville,
Uh-huh.
Me and Gary got him on this gig, this session thing that we did. It's where we call them high-lows, where it's church sing-along tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. Familiar.
There's a CCM hit, and you play it. You play it in 3 keys, or 2 keys or 3 keys. We were doing 2 keys then. We're doing 3 keys now. And the producer, another dear friend, and we had told him, we said, well, you need to try Tim. I mean, he's a great player. And the guy said, all right, if you guys say he's good, all right. Well, we had all been doing that gig for quite a while, that particular account. And so we were pretty relaxed, and it's just like we were just sitting around, and we brought the producer would hand out the charts, and and we're listening to the thing and making notes and just talking and making jokes. We all knew what we were doing.
Yeah.
But it kind of came across like we were just all having a good time and whatever.
Sure.
And Tim was one of those kind of guys, just like, he just saw us having a good time and wasn't really paying that much attention to what we were supposed to be doing.
Right.
And finally, the producer came to me and says, your boy's not pulling up his end over there. Y'all need to talk. And so, so that was, it's like, you got to know the gig, and this was early on in Tim's session career. And obviously, me and Gary pulled him aside, and he was like, oh my gosh, oh yeah, sure, and he was on from then on.
Interesting, yeah.
He just saw us all having a good time, but we were having a good time because we were doing what we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And still laughing and still having, okay, then we go play it. And and the producer would, this is the kind of thing where you're supposed to be making notes on, in Tim's case, the keyboard player's case. Well, it's the piano part, and then there's a Rhodes part, and then there's the bell part, and there's there's like whatever. And the producer would go, hey, Tim, wasn't there supposed to be a oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
The producer's like, I'm kind of getting tired of telling him his job,
Oh boy.
So I'm not. I love Tim.
No. Well, thank you for filling in some of the holes there for me. That's fantastic.
But it's also to point out to people, it's like, yeah, learn the gig, know the gig, know what you're supposed to be doing. And you're always going to have fun if you're doing your job and you know what you're doing. You can relax as long as you're doing your job. Then have a great time.
That's probably some of the best advice right there. Is know the gig and be prepared.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, I have a couple quick questions before we wrap up here. I know that you had said that Jeff Beccaro was a huge influence in your playing and stuff. Yeah. And I know his brother Steve, and I just love him.
Tim introduced me to Steve. Tim and I were together. We're playing with a country group called Shadazy, playing in L.A. And Tim says, "Hey, come have dinner with me and Steve Beccaro." So,
oh, nice. He's still active, man. Yeah. What was it about Jeff that made him so highly regarded by so many drummers?
Well, he was. I mean, man, I don't want to be vague, but I wish I could be specific, but I'm not sure I can. He was just one of those kind of guys. It's like he always played the right thing for the song. I mean. He could be, if he wanted to be, he could be totally anonymous. Just there's so many tracks back in the day when he was obviously alive and active. You're like, man, that feels great. Who is that? Like for example, I contrast Jeff Beccaro and Steve Gadd, both insanely brilliant players, incredible musicians, but you almost always knew when it was Gadd, even if he was playing something kind of simple. You could just tell. And Jeff was a little bit different. Jeff could be anonymous if he wanted to. Same with Carlos Vega. Just play the perfect part. Play exactly what the song requires without quote unquote signing your name to it. And that's and I'm not that sounds like I'm putting down Steve Gadd, and I absolutely
no, not at all. No.
Yeah, he's brilliant. But he just kind of Steve Gadd does what he does, and he's incredible. But it's like you can hear it. So
yeah, I've heard some musicians. I won't mention any names, but somebody that came in and played this thing on a track, and the producer's like, well, that's not at all what I'm looking for. I want this other thing. And he basically said, well, why the hell did you hire me then? Because this is what I do, right? And there is that. Now, how about just a couple quick questions? How important is it to be a versatile drummer today if you're trying to work in studios?
Well, to me, yeah, that's like I said it early in this interview that when I'm talking to younger drummers, I'm like, learn the styles. I mean, I've been on a day of recording where we've done Latin, we've done big band, we've done, you like 4 or 5 different things,
Yeah.
style, maybe a country thing, maybe a whatever, you know, and yeah, that's, I mean, I'm not saying every session is going to be like that,
Hmm.
but you just, you don't know,
Yeah.
and again, it's like, that's one of the, and well, I guess I'd be honest and say that that's the fact that they can do that. That's why they call the people that they call. They call me. They call this particular bass player,
Yeah.
this guitar player, this keyboard player, like it's David Hunsinger probably, or Craig Nelson,
Hmm.
um, Mark Baldwin, or Tom Hemme, or somebody like that. Because they can go, okay, here's this chart, and it's this
Yeah.
style. Here's this
Yeah.
chart, it's this style. This is a
Hmm.
calypso thing. This
Hmm.
is a straight up country shuffle. And it's like, you got to know what to do. You got to know those styles. Um, now, sometimes, and this happened to be more than once. Um, like I'm trying to remember a good because I don't do a ton of country stuff.
Uh-huh.
I have every man. Man, I'm sorry, I'm got 10 different tangents going on at one time. We're very lucky here in Nashville. There's a good group of us, the drummers. We're all good friends.
Yeah.
We have our little drummers breakfast. We're a bunch of like me and
Oh,
Steve,
fun, man. That's cool.
Dan Needham, Garth Justice. We'll get together and have breakfast, and because we don't get to work together, we just
Yeah.
we know each other, and so
Passing each other. Yeah.
yeah, and so we do that. And one time, we all sat down at breakfast, and Dan Needham says, "Guys, I just worked on one of the hardest things I've ever had to play the other day. It
Hmm.
was a country shuffle in 3 at 82 BPM, you know."
Oh my
And
gosh.
we all
Yeah.
just kind of laughed
Uh-huh.
because that is one of the hardest things to do, to make
Yeah.
that feel right.
Hmm.
If you
Hmm.
don't, that's a kind of a good little, that's a good, what's the word, litmus test of whether or not somebody knows their stuff or they don't. If you say that and they go, "Oh yeah, I know, I've been there," to play something, to play it
Hmm.
that slow, and then 82 is not super slow, but it's in
Yeah.
that spot,
Sure.
um, and to make the shuffle feel right, to make
Right.
and you know just what I heard the incredible drummer Benny Greb talking about Steve Gadd again, and
Hmm.
he said of Steve Gadd, he said, what Steve plays is not, he said, most professional drummers can play what he plays. He said,
Hmm.
it's just how he plays it.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
right. Steve had has that internal, the dynamics of what he does. Like you listen to 50 Ways, the song 50
Hmm.
Ways to Leave Your Lover.
Yep.
That drum group, a lot of people can play it,
Yep.
but to play it the way he does with that lope and the dynamics of the
Yeah.
it's all doing this. It's all just
Yeah.
kind of, it's a thing, it's a living thing that he's playing, and
Yeah.
that's why he's so brilliant, and he just does that, so.
He just does that. That's like the Purdy shuffle or something,
Oh yeah, absolutely,
You
yeah,
know,
and that's
it's
a great.
like everybody can do it, but or a lot, I mean, most players can play it now, but they don't sound like him for some reason.
That's right. Well,
Of course, he
Bernard
knows
plays
it.
it the way he does, and then Jeff plays it, and even when Jeff plays it, it's like it doesn't sound like Bernard,
Right.
but they're both incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
Jeff kind
Yeah.
of has a lot of, I mean, yeah, even there's that. It's funny. It's on YouTube, been there forever. Where Porcaro is breaking down the Rosanna groove, and he
Oh,
talks about
oh yeah. I've seen that. It's great.
Our Purdy and playing Babylon Sisters and Holy
Putting that
Lab.
extra kick in there. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then he talks about John Bonham with Fool in the Rain, and he plays both of them, and then he plays it his way, and of course it all feels amazing because Jeff was just he had that thing, that pocket, that and it's again, it's just similar to a Steve Gadd thing with playing the shuffle. All those little grace notes have to be a certain volume. You don't go shikity tickety backity tickety da.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like it's got all the internal stuff that's really subtle, but if it's not there, you miss it. So.
Yeah. That's wild. So, John, we're going to wrap this up. I want to ask you if you have just your best advice for some young hotshot drummer that just lives for it, that's trying to become somebody beyond learning your rudiments. Whether
Yeah.
it's
Well, we've touched on a lot of it already. I'll just go back and call out the highlights.
Sure.
But you've said it. Like learn the styles, learn what you're doing. The Roy Clark story. That's perfect. Know the gig. Know who the boss is. Know who's
Hmm.
backing up whom.
Hmm.
And yeah, just know your place. I mean, it's that it's not. And, if you're if you're the next Buddy Rich and it's you're in the and it's whatever your John Doe big band and it's all about you, then fine. If you can do that, then more power to you. But until you're in that spot, you're playing for somebody else.
Yep. Yeah.
And know when it's time to to sign your name to it and then play something that's going to blow everybody away, and know when it's not.
Yeah.
Know when your gig is just to lay down to just to lay it down and play the song the way the song needs to be played. So
Wonderful. That's wonderful advice. And as Tim would say, you got to be a good hang.
you know what? That's another great topic. Absolutely. And because like, Nashville, it's not like the stuff is, even though I just talked about country shuffle being hard, and it is, but it's like a lot of the stuff, got, got. A lot of guys can play that,
Yeah.
and if you're not fun to be around, then they're going to get somebody else who can play that,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple million other
Yeah,
drummers that do that.
exactly. So it's and I know lots of guys who've lost gigs and lost work because they're just not fun to be around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I grew
don't
up
be
in
that
some
guy.
No, yeah, I'm not anymore because I don't do
Well, I
it.
know. I
But
mean,
John,
don't
thank you,
be that guy. So,
for spending a little time with me today. It's invaluable. Man, I hope you just play until, like somebody said, I'm going to play until I can't play. So,
yeah,
you
I'm
know,
still enjoying it. I still getting ready to go back out with Amy Grant and working on that, and that's fun. That's what, like Jeremy McPherson said when he took the gig. He's like, man, this came along at the perfect time. It's like, so if I have to go down to Music Row and play on 8 more bad country demos, then I'm just
yeah.
shitting myself. And that's funny. People, drummers aspire to that, but you do it for years and years and years and years and years, and finally you're like, yeah, let's. And so
Yeah.
yeah, we go out. It's a bunch of great people, and Amy's a wonderful boss, and we have a great time, and still making a living, and it's I'm blessed.
That's so awesome, man. You are blessed, and thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for having me.
We'll be in touch.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay. Take care.